Take us inside your thoughts on the SEC returning this weekend, the Big Ten returning here in just about a month's time. I think a lot of college football fans, to be honest with you, have been a little underwhelmed with what we've seen to this point.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the games, and there's, quite frankly, not a lot to see. Notre Dame has been dominant, so that's been one of the bigger stories. Miami has looked very good. But, you know, it's a lot of games that have been routes and a couple of interesting games, mostly involving Louisiana. But without the SEC, the Big Ten, it has been slim pickings. But that changes this weekend, of course, with the SEC with 7 games. And then, of course, as everyone knows by now, the Big Ten shows up in a month. Welcome back to college football. But the SEC lineup is not going to overwhelm you. Alabama plays Missouri. I think they're a four touchdown favorite. It may go higher. You have a couple of sneaky games. LSU, the defending champion. Zubin hosts Mike Leach and Mississippi State. That will take some getting used to. I mean, some other games that are a little more off-Broadway that are interesting to fans of the SEC, but probably aren't going to have the entire nation riveted to the screen.
Paul, let me ask you this question because I can't figure it out yet. Did the SEC change the schedule from when it first, their first schedule that was released several years ago in terms of SEC teams playing each other because they got rid of the non-SEC teams?
Essentially, the SEC is doing a 10-game conference schedule. So in the SEC, Keyshawn, you play 8 games, 6 from your own division, and then you have 2 crossovers. So they've kept the crossovers. Like Alabama should have played Georgia last weekend. That would have been the featured game of the day. Instead, that game will now be in week 4. So they've added additional in-conference games. Alabama, the best team in the league, got Missouri, one of the worst teams. Some people have raised their eyebrows about that, but it hasn't changed dramatically. It is weird, though, getting used to it, because so many in people's minds, you're thinking you have to, you win 10 games, 11 games, and now with only a 10-game season, you have to really recalibrate your expectations for certain teams. But it will be different. Then there'll be a conference championship game. In the Big Ten, they will play it a little bit differently. They'll have an 8-game season, and I'm sure you guys talked about this last week. Then while the conference divisional champions are playing, then it's going to be 2 versus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you have, I think, the coveted 8 or 9 versus 9 game, which I know we'll all be at, and that will involve you, Professor Zubin, probably because Rutgers will be that number 9 team.
No doubt.
Paul, there's a couple new head coaches in the SEC. One familiar in the SEC, obviously, as an assistant in Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, but you got Mike Leach at Mississippi State. What teams are the sneaky teams to look out for in the SEC?
We also have Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri, who came over from Appalachian State. In terms of sneaky teams, I mean, I'm really fascinated by year 3 of Jimbo Fisher. Remember, he got that incredible $70 million a year deal a couple years ago to flee Florida State, which turned out to be a good decision on his part. He has yet to really win the country over. I think fans understand how difficult things are out there, so I'm really watching them very closely. And while they're not sneaky, they're in the top 10. I'm intrigued by Florida in Dan Mullen's 3rd year because this program has rocked all over the place, and it seems like it's back. Florida has to beat Georgia this year to make that claim for the college football playoff, but with Kyle Trask, who a year ago was not even the starter, he was a career backup. And then he came in when Felipe Franks was injured. That looks to me like, even though it's a preseason top 10 team, it could be a sneaky college football playoff team. And Georgia, which was the favorite in the East going in, already has seen its quarterback leave. Jamie Newman, who was a graduate transfer senior from Wake Forest, he opted out 2 weeks ago, somewhat hard to explain. And then they have a transfer from Southern Cal, J.T. Daniels, Keyshawn, who started early there and then lost his job, and now he's vying for the starting job at UGA.
Yeah, I know.
Paul, who in the SEC is actually on the Heisman watch? Who should we know about?
Yeah, I would start with Najee Harris from Alabama. I mean, he's been there a couple of years. He came out of California, Jay, as the #1 running back in the country. And, at Alabama, you're playing with the best of the best. So even though he has started, it's taken him a while, but he looks like he is going to emerge this year And then, the league has already lost some of its marquee players. Jamar Chase, the best wide receiver in the country, who would have been on that Heisman list, opted out a couple of weeks ago. So you've seen some interesting machinations there. And then it's just going to be, one of these quarterbacks that emerge that could possibly be in the Heisman race. But as we know, and we talk about this in November and December, the Heisman usually comes down to teams that are in contention. So I would therefore go with Najee Harris, who is going to play, I think, on the best team in the SEC, which is Alabama. I know everybody's surprised.
Paul, let me ask you this. Deion Sanders obviously took a job at Jackson State down in Mississippi. Do you see him staying there for a couple years and eventually landing a Power 5 job, even though he didn't get the Florida State job, which I believe he probably should have?
If he does what I think he's going to do and what he's already done in 24 hours on the job, I think he will get out of there fairly quickly. I mean, he lit that place up yesterday, as you guys know. And, it's, you don't have to have background. I mean, Deion Sanders can recruit on his name. And what I mean by background, he has not been a coach, but, he's got, as long as he puts a good staff around him, I think he'll attract players down there. It's a pretty good football program anyway. He would be a very bright addition. And you think about that state already. You've got in one state, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, and now Deion Sanders. There's a lot of star power in the state of Mississippi right now at the head football coaching ranks.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.